Hi, I'm Dr. Frank A. Thomas, and we are presenting another installment of the African American Preaching Legacy Series at Christian Theological Seminary of Indianapolis, Indiana. We are privileged to bring you the best preachers across the scope and breadth of the Black church, and today, as my very special guest, we have one of the princes of preaching in this country. Dewey Smith is sitting right here, and I've been waiting to have this interview. I mean, it is going to be rich, it's going to be fun, deep. This is a man of God, the House of Hope of Atlanta, Georgia, Stellar nominated, singing, preaching, hooping, church building, and we're just going to get the benefit of his wisdom and his truth, and I'm excited to have him. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, sir. Thanks. I'm humbled and honored beyond words just to be here. It means a lot to just be able to have a conversation with you.
Oh man, I've been trying to get you here. I'm glad we got it hooked up.
Anytime. This is amazing. The work that you do, the teaching and the people that you impact, you will never know until you get to eternity. The people that you bless, man.
Well, thank you, sir. I received that. Thank you.
I mean it.
Now, there might be, a couple people, most people, probably a lot of our audience, we also have international audience, people watch this stuff all over the globe. Most of our audiences probably know Dewey Smith, but just in case, there are a couple people that don't know, what would you like our audience to know about Dewey Smith?
Well, I'm a third generation preacher, Baptist preacher, on my paternal side. My father pastored for 50 years in Macon, Georgia, my hometown. He retired in 22. And my grandfather, the late Jack Smith, was a pastor, quartet singer, etc. He pastored until his death in 81. And so I was called to preach at age 13, but because I had an affinity for athletics, music, and saw all the angst of the church. Right. This is the last thing I wanted to do. And so I ran with everything, and took about 5 years in a series of traumas, really, that brought me to a point of surrender. And at 17, and during my senior year of high school, I answered the call. Also have preachers on my mother's side, apostolic preachers. I grew up as a musician as well. And so I started preaching at 17. I started pastoring at 19. And I pastored Beulah Land Bible Church from 1990 up until 2004. And I moved to Atlanta to take over the House of Hope, become that pastor in 2004. So I've been there for 20 years. My wife and I took piano lessons when I was 5, and we've been married a few months, be 30 years, 2 sons. And, just been something called a jack of all trades, I guess, but I like creativity, I like laughter, I like humor, and so trying to bring all of who I am in terms of my experiences and my gifts to bear, and I love blessing people. I believe I was placed on earth to bring a message of hope, and preaching is one of the avenues that God has given me, or gifts that God has given me to manifest that purpose. And so I'm just excited and love to see people empowered through preaching and through the power of God.
So talk to me about your call.
Yeah, it was the Tuesday after the third Sunday in July of 1983. I just turned 13, was at the State Congress of Christian Education, General Missionary Baptist Convention in Fort Valley, Georgia. And the dean of our Congress, his name was Dr. Winifred Hope. He pastored the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Athens, Georgia. He was the dean of the Congress. Dr. J.H. Flakes was the president of our Congress, and Dr. Cameron Alexander was the president of the Georgia Baptist Association Convention. He preached a sermon that Tuesday from the Beatitudes. Jesus is the light of the world. Let your light so shine. And I was overwhelmed. I would emulate preachers at 2, 3. My aunt bought me my own robe, my pulpit, and those types of things. And so when family would gather, I would, preach and practice on them and raise hymns of the church. I was a junior deacon at 8, so this is 2 or 3 years of age. And they said that I would sing a song and raise an offering at 2 or 3. So I've been around the church, love church, and I was started a musician at age 8, so church is all I know. And I've been touched and blessed in ministry, but that day when Dr. Winifred Hope preached that message, it was an overwhelming presence and call and sense of purpose. I didn't know how to really handle that. I knew, although there was 1,000 people in that room, Green Elementary School, I never shall forget it. It's been 41 years. But I felt like it was just him, I, and the Lord. And I heard and I felt just a sense of responsibility. And I knew I'd been called. There are a lot of things in life that we believe or we feel or we may desire, but one of the few things in my life that I know. And at 13, and I wept, and my youth leader, I was inconsolable. And I went to the Congress, ironically, to meet all the pretty girls. Yes, we did. I was in Macon, and we're in the 6th district, and the 5th district, Atlanta, and Augusta was the 10th district. And all the beautiful girls came from the 5th district and the 10th district, And none of that meant anything for the rest of the week. I didn't leave the room. I was just in my Bible. And it was as if I heard an audible sound. It was overwhelming. When I got back home, the following week or that Friday, I wrestled with it. I didn't share it with anybody. Nick Tunstall and Bruce Wilder and a few of our friends who were there knew something happened to me because I just wasn't the same. When I got back to sports and playing ball, and I just didn't feel ready. I'm like, this is not something I want to do. So I ran, and over the next almost 5 years, I lost about 9 people who were my friends, former teammates, and at different junctures. And here's the irony. I dreamt about each of them prior to their passing. 3 were killed in a car accident. 1 was killed in a shooting at Mercer University by my former teammate, football. Another was killed by a neighbor who lived right behind me. And then on top of that, 4 of the guys who I played basketball with, and we would travel to different parts of the city playing basketball. Because I was an athlete, the guys who we would be around, many of them weren't into the Lord. And I never shall forget, one day I was supposed to be going, I think I was 15, going to Bible study with, my mother was coming to get me from the gym where I was playing, Hillcrest Park, outdoor court. And my friends wanted to go play across town. And so I decided I was going to walk with them. And as I was walking with them to go across town to play basketball, I knew I was in trouble because I didn't want to go out still wrestling. Got on the street, maybe 2 miles from my house, and a side street, and my mother drove up. There's no way she should have known where I was. Well, those friends who I was with, 30 minutes later, assaulted a woman sexually. And all of them went to prison. And if my mom, who was driving down Pound Avenue, and she said to her, the Holy Spirit told her to turn on this street. And she turned on that street and saw me and beckoned for me to get in that car. And I often wonder what would have happened had not my mom showed up. And so things like that happened from July of 83 and the end of April of 88. 3 friends died in a car accident. In every dream, we were on an island, this deserted island, and I was responsible for allowing them to come on the ship. I was responsible for distributing the tickets for them to get on the ship. Wow. And I wouldn't do it. And because I wouldn't distribute, I was on the ship, they weren't. Beast would devour them, they would drown. And in every dream, it was because I had the ability and I didn't. So after that last unfortunate incident, after Joker died, after Brian killed a guy, after Lee Arthur shot the guy at Amridge University, after my friends, in April of '88, I told my father, I said, this is what I've been going through. And he said, I knew it. I've been waiting on you. And so May 1st of '88 at the 7:30 service, he preached from the book of Acts. And I walked down and announced my call to the church that I had been called to preach. And 2 weeks later, they gave me a trial sermon. 2 weeks. I mean, no books, no preparation. 14. And so I preached my first sermon the third Sunday of 1988. And the rest has been 36 years ago.
So do you remember the text and the sermon title for your trial sermon?
Absolutely, of course.
What tell us about it. What was it?
My sermon text was 2 Timothy 4, and Paul says, for I'm now ready to be offered, and the time of my departure is at hand. I fought a good fight, finished my course, kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but to all them that love his appearing. And so my topic that night was working and worshiping for my crown. Yeah, May 15th. Yeah, never forget it. I agonized for, the thing is, I've been writing sermons and listening to preaching the whole time. So I would blast music and blast sermons. So I've been listening to preaching, and of course so that was the first message.
So who were some of your preaching mentors? Because now you've got a call, and I imagine you were invited to preach.
Absolutely.
So you're beginning to develop a method. And
Right.
So who were some of your preaching mentors?
Well, of course, listen to my father and grandfather. My father was incredibly studious, and I could still hear him typing on the typewriter. He would type his sermons in manuscript. He was a manuscript preacher, and when I could so the love of study and preparation came for him. My grandfather was not a learned man, but he was gifted, a gifted poet and incredibly gifted vocally. Dr. C. Glover of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, became a preaching mentor for me. And then, of course, Dr. Joel Gregory, who's still a mentor today. When I was 16, I heard him preach for the first time when he was at Travis Avenue Baptist Church. And he became a friend. And then, of course, I would listen to Dr. Donald Parsons, G. Patterson, but I guess the gentleman who I probably talked more regularly with about preaching was Dr. Matt King Carter.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we were incredibly close.
Yeah, he was a preacher.
Yeah, we were incredibly close. I would listen to Adrian Rogers growing up, and Charles Stanley, and of course Dr. Gregory. So those were my favorites.
Tell me about becoming a pastor.
My first year, I was actually in college. I preached 61 times. Wow. From May of '88 up until Father's Day of June.
What was the college?
I was at Morehouse College.
Oh, I didn't know.
Morehouse College. So I was the undergrad at Morehouse College.
Okay.
And so I went in August of '88. And so from my first sermon until Father's Day of '89, I preached 61 times. So which is pretty incredible at that stage. So due to my relationships and one of my teachers in school, high school, she was Presbyterian, a white Presbyterian. And something happened with their church or whatever. So she had a lot of influence with the elders. So I preached 2 or 3 months in a white Presbyterian church at 18. Wow. Yeah, so it gave me a different kind of approach. And so at 18, my great-grandmother's church was Beulah Church. My grandfather preached in that church as well. The pastor was Pastor Hudson, who pastored 2 churches. And so he had a sickness, and so 6 months after I started preaching, he invited me to come and preach for him, which was October of '88. And so periodically I would preach for him when his health was declining. And Thanksgiving Day of '89, that evening he passed away. And when he passed away, the church, had the pulpit committee, et cetera. And in March of '90, they asked me to come and fill in because they couldn't find a preacher to preach that Sunday. The preacher that they were inviting to be a candidate, something happened and he couldn't come. And so that Saturday, Deacon Edward Booz, who's with the Lord now, and Deacon Jimmy Williams, who's also with the Lord, they called me to ask could I come and preach that Sunday. And I went and preached that Sunday, and I was 19, and I never left. And they called me to be their pastor. That's my sophomore year of college.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So tell me about your seminary, some of your professors. Tell me about, you graduated Morehouse, I'm assuming you went.
Yeah, I went to Morehouse College, and I started pastoring my sophomore year. Religion philosophy major, and to be honest with you, Morehouse prepared me for seminary. Right. They challenged me in some deep ways. My dean, I'm still very, very tight with now, Dean Lawrence Edward Carter, Carter.
Everybody, he's got a legacy.
Dean Carter, he's my guy. My advisor was Dr. Aaron Parker, who's just an incredible thinker. Dr. Jackson, my New Testament professor, who also pastored, he passed away. So the foundation that they laid prepared me for seminary. So I started at ITC. When I finished Morehouse, I went to ITC for a year and a half, 2 years, while I was still pastoring simultaneously.
Right.
The church, I got married 5 years after becoming the pastor. The church experienced explosive growth. I just couldn't do it. So I came out of ITC, and 3 years later went back to school. I enrolled at Southern Christian University in Montgomery, Alabama. It was one of the first programs where I could be in person and also do some long distance and be regionally accredited. Right. I wanted something that was, thoughtful, something that was going to be challenging. And so I went to Southern Christian and then finished there with my master's, and then went back to do my D-Min at United Theological,
When were you there?
I finished in 12.
In 2012, okay. Okay.
So just in that lineage of, what Dr. Proctor did, and so my work was in prophetic preaching. And so it's just been an incredible moment.
I was trying to connect because I graduated in there in '91, so I was trying to figure you around when because
I was in college then.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The old preacher.
But you in the great days of it. Yeah.
So tell me about Beulah Land.
Yeah.
Tell me about church, pastoring, 19, growing.
Yeah. I was in college, and of course, Macon, Georgia is about an hour, 15 minutes south of Atlanta. If traffic is good. And so my second semester of my sophomore year, I was called a pastor. And of course, my father, who never told me directly, but vehemently disagreed. Yeah, never would share with me, but he was brutally bothered by that. Brutally bothered by it. He never shared it with me, but he shared it with a lot of other people. He would share it from the pulpit. I didn't understand it at the time, but he had seen so many of his colleagues who started to pastor young, forsake their education, mature prematurely, and not live and not enjoy. I think because he was a father early in life. He was married at 18, 2 kids. By the time I came along, he was in his early 20s, so he never lived. He was 22 when he got called to preach, and 23. So I think he wanted me to kind of finish my education, and because he realized that church would be difficult. And so that was an issue with him. He never said it. I was hurt when I would hear him say that, but I got peace about it and got a lot more clarity as I matured. But then my grandmother's passing She passed in December of '09. Prior to her passing, she talked to me about that. And she said something. She said, he really never wanted you to leave him. But he never could say that. So that's when I got that perspective, it helped me. I just did, sometimes it's difficult to communicate your vulnerability and your transparency and to say, I'm hurt that you're leaving. But I understand now, because it is difficult when church can make you grow, and I think the stages of development are very, very important. And I've tried to do that with some of my sons and daughters as well in ministry now. So many of them, I didn't want them to have the pressure of a church and not being able to live. One of your students, Reginald Sharp, and I can go on, and that's another thing, but Reginald was 12 when I became his pastor. And I saw earlier that he was called, and he preached his first sermon at 15. And I became my dad. Because I saw the invitations and opportunities and people not letting him live. He was in the band and wanted to be a drum major, and wanted to go out on a date with girls, and the grandmother was bringing them. I'm like, listen, so I would be very adamant and bring him up with me. Listen, he's a young man who happens to preach.
Right.
He's not a preacher, he's a young man first.
Yeah. Right.
So we're gonna let him be a young man.
Right.
So he wants to go to the band, he wants to go. If he doesn't want to date your daughter, that's fine. If you see him at the movies 1 week with your daughter, and the next week at a game, he's a young man. We're gonna let him be a young man. He's gonna mature, he's gonna get his education. And so I became my dad in that instance, but I saw it and I understood it.
So now tell me about the House of Hope in Atlanta.
Yeah, I served in Macon. I went there with 48 members to Mule Land in 1990. And by 2003, we had 4,000 members. Wow. I mean, it was home. The Lord was sending incredible favor. You got to think 90,000 people in the city and 4,000 of them were members of the church. So it was just massive ministry, very progressive. And in June of '03, the Lord, Spirit just began to move in my heart. I had been preaching on faith. I thought it was for them, but I really was on autopilot. And one of my classmates from Morehouse, who I hadn't seen in over 10 years, came to the church looking for me. I was actually in Chicago. And this guy, was friends with my brother as well. And he said, man, he's been in my spirit. I've been seeing him in dreams preaching in my church. Like this guy, for him to say he's in church, number one, and the Lord, the Spirit, I was like, okay. And this was June 18th of 2003. And within 2 weeks, I was wrestling with, Lord, what is this? And so I submitted my application the last day where they were accepting applications, June 30th of 2003. Went through that process and with hundreds of resumes, and it came down to 2 candidates. And then ultimately I was invited to interview and preached, and they called me in November of '03. So I leave 4,000 people in my hometown where I'm incredibly comfortable. I'm married now, I got a 3-year-old son. Church is in excellent shape, doing ministry, human services, community development, just really making a difference. But it was as if the Lord was saying, you've run your leg of the race. So it took me from a contemporary, open kind of ministry, average age is 29, to take me to a church with 400 members, ultra conservative, average age 63.6. So I go from being this musical guy with full instrumentation as a musician, praise team, current, contemporary, kind of blended, to go to a church that was strong in its heyday, very strong, but was experiencing some attrition. But I mean, no drums, no praise team, no organ, just pipe organ, just very high church, altar church. Like, Lord, what are you doing? What are you doing? But I'd always had an affinity for older people and with songs, and I'm most comfortable around older people. And my first church, because it was young, I was young, it looked like me. So the struggle there was to reach out to older people. Right. So I was intentional. Now I'm going through this church, average age of 63.6, and now the struggle is different. We got to become younger. And my predecessor, Pastor H.F. Shepherd, was there 47 years. Incredible leader, incredible pastor, very beloved, very strong. And so our styles were different, but doesn't mean he's deficient. He's just a high church. And he resigned due to his health declining. They called me someone who's totally the opposite of what he kind of stood for stylistically, I guess, his philosophy of ministry. But it was necessary for the church appreciating the old, having an affinity for hymns and devotion and anthems, etc., and an organic love for that, being a musician and a singer, but also being relevant enough and open enough and diverse enough to realize we have to be blended. And so that happened in 2004, January of 2004, when I started my pastorate there, and God just sent incredible explosive growth. And so navigating that for the past 20 years, I'm really just humbled by it, still challenged by it, still excited, but God has been good.
Yeah. Well, obviously the Lord has blessed you richly, and your preaching is such a critical part of that. So let's get to your preaching. So if we had to talk about your preaching, do you consider yourself maybe none of these? Expository, narrative, so tell me about.
Yeah, I think I'm more expositional. I probably, the majority of times when I preach, it's going to be an expositional approach. But I do believe it's necessary for the preacher to be adept with various styles. I believe if you're preaching to people weekly, I think we owe it to them to be diverse and to be creative so it doesn't become monotonous. Exactly. And so sometimes I do narrative, sometimes I'll be more inductive or deductive. Sometimes I do some first person, and I'm also into video and film. So I like to do illustrated sermons twice a year. Sometimes I'll create a mini film, a mini movie, to do a reenactment of a biblical story, to create the resolution of the tension in the film and resolve it on stage. And sometimes I use props, I use media, and so incorporating all those things into the preaching moment. But I think predominantly I am an expository preacher.
So if I asked you for 3 principles that guided your preaching, what are the 3 major principles?
3 major principles
that would guide that you would consider?
One is something I learned from Joel. Preaching is bringing the wasness of the word into the isness of now through the medium of the communicator's personality and gifts. So that description of preaching for me has been central. Every time I stand, one foot, I stand on razor's edge. One foot is on the ancient text and the culture and the history, the language that gave impetus to that. My other foot is on my area code to which I'm speaking. So balancing that razor's edge and not falling off of it. Because if you fall off of it, you're going to get cut and you're going to bleed on the people. And so the third principle.
Now, was that 2?
That's 2, yeah. So bringing the wasness of the word to the isness of now through the medium of the communicator's gifts and personalities and skills. I think that's important because preaching is already incredibly intimidating. And when you listen to people and you have your mentors that you model and love, sometimes a feeling of inadequacy will creep in. And then we become copies sometimes and imitate to the point where we really deny who we are. And I just think each person has a unique DNA and gifts and skills. And I don't believe that God anoints counterfeits. I believe we can pick up from different people, but inevitably you find your voice when you bring all of who you are. I think that's power in that. So trying to liberate people to be who they are.
So that would be number 2. Because I asked you for 3.
That's 1, really. That's the wasness of the word into the isness of now through the medium of the gifts, personalities, and skills. 2, stand on that razor's edge,
Yeah.
one foot on the ancient text, other foot in the present era code. The third would be trusting that God knew what God was doing when God called us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Trusting that.
Yeah.
And that had those three things I think have been central in terms, I guess, of philosophy of ministry maybe. Those things have been central.
Okay. Let's talk about hooping, and we've had some conversation about it already. And I'll say to my audience, what I said to you is that we celebrate hooping around here. We think it's an art form. We think it's genius.
Yeah.
That somehow that hooping has been cast to the back. You do it, but it's like we talk about it in the back halls. The preachers get together and laugh late night. They'll talk about it, but nobody will bring it to the sunlight like something to be ashamed of. And none to be ashamed. I think that of course, we've got people that it is buffoonery and ignorance, and they are abusing, but we've also got some that it is pure genius and is saving people. And for 400 years, we've had preachers who, so you are a master hooper, and we love hooping around here. I love it. I just, I say it all the time, I said, I'd hoop if I could. As Martha Simmons says all the time, she says, everybody would hoop if they could, and I'm not, Martha, I'm right. So tell us about hooping from your perspective. Any piece you want to share about it, we celebrate it, and we celebrate the gift that you bring in it. So let's just talk about it.
Well, I appreciate you first acknowledging the art form. I think preaching is both art and anointing. It's science and it's spirit. And I think the idiomatic expression of African Americans being a rhythmic people innately, just from prior to 1619, coming here, the celebration and preaching, and particularly a slave preacher, when you live in those types of heinous predicaments, something needed to celebrate. The gospel was worth celebrating. Hope came through the excitement, through promising people something, whether it was eschatological or whether it was Christological, just the promise of the brightness of another day, that God's mercies were new and God's benevolence would be bestowed upon a people to just keep believing and keep hoping. Right. And I think sometimes we make preaching so cerebral, and it is, and it should be, and being homiletically attractive and hermeneutically accurate, and it should be. But too often we don't celebrate the gospel. I don't think necessarily that every sermon should end with celebration, because every sermon doesn't call for that. Right. I think good meat makes its own gravy. Right. But at the same time, isn't Christ worth celebrating? If you went to a football game and your football team won, right. We rejoice over that. Right. But we make the gospel as if something. So I think preaching is both head and heart. And I believe if people are gifted enough to use their talents, to use their gifts, and I think hooping, the science and the art of it, it is the rhythm of bringing the message home. It is the call and response. It is improvising. It is the back and forth. It is rhythmic. It is, whether it's with an organ, with a piano, we all come together. The organist interprets their response to the gospel. The preacher with their own vocality, they have their response. And so there's a synergy and a jazz, and then there's a moment of breath, and then the congregation say yeah. So it's all musical. So we bring our instruments, whether it's amen, whether it's the drum beat, whether it's the organ with the licks, whether it's the preacher with the riffs, whether it's the preaching with the breathing, it all comes together to form this beautiful tapestry of power and goodness and hope, that through God and through God's word, life can be better. That is hope for a brighter day. Make a decision. You know, the late Miles Jones would often say that preaching is proclamation in search of a response. And so the preacher, even through the hoop, that is the quest for a response.
Now we have an international audience, so some people may not know what hooping is.
Okay.
Now, the American audience. So what would you say? I mean, you've described it masterfully. I loved it. Okay, but so how would you define it to somebody that don't know what it is?
It is the end of the message, typically, for the preacher when the voice either goes through a crescendo. Typically, if you're more Pentecostal hooping, there is a crescendo and a staccato. It is a repeated rhythm and pattern. And the Lord said, it's a rhythm. Often in more Baptist or Methodist settings, it involves more of a decrescendo, or the voice drops, and to build up with a slow pace. Sometimes it is a singing, it's a syncopation, it is either singing it is vocally demonstrating the third point in that message, or a story, or it's giving people hope and believing that there's a better day. Do you believe it? And that's the call and response. And often there's an organist, and so there's a rhythm between those two. And then say yeah. So now the church has a responsibility to respond. Yeah. Say yeah. So it's all coming together, and we're celebrating together. And so it is not the audience enjoying the preacher. It is us all adhering and attesting to the message, and we come together to celebrate it. We're gonna put the icing on this. Right. And we're gonna close this thing out, whatever the thematic emphasis of that message has been. Now we close out with, whether it's a recapitulation of the main points or another point or the big idea, we wanna do that rhythmically and vocally and almost musically, you know? And so I guess that's probably the best way I could explain it to somebody who has never heard it.
So that was absolutely fabulous. So tell me who your 3 favorite hoopers are.
That's a great question. I guess growing up, because I think more of my focus was on hooping when I was younger. Yeah. And I think the 3 that I listened to most often as a 12, 13-year-old, number 1 was C.L. Franklin. I think C.L. Franklin probably is the most imitated hooper in history, you know. And I would also listen to Jasper Williams, who also was, I guess, a mentee, or not a copy, but he styled himself after Dr. Franklin. And then the 3rd was Donald Parsons, out of Chicago. So going to the Baptist convention, those were the 3 that I listened to all the time growing up. And then from that, you know, there are others who I enjoy and I've been blessed by. Gilbert Patterson, G. Patterson had his own approach to it. He was a whole different approach to preaching and closing. I love the rhythm of Leroy Elliott. He was a jazz, you know, I would listen to him all the time as a youngster. I like to hear Gina Stewart. I like to hear Dorinda Clark Cole. Frank Ray is a master hooper as well. So those are the few.
So we could talk about hooping forever. I could anyway. So especially as a non-hooper, I could ask you questions. You know, you can. If I get lessons, give me a chalkboard down here. You can show me how to do it.
What a preacher said, if you can't hoop, just get a safety pin and stick yourself at that part of the sermon. If you just yell in key, if you just let us feel it, so everybody can hoop in their own way. Everybody can. Everybody can hoop in their own way. Everybody can do it.
I'm deeply appreciative of you, doing this interview, because one of the things that we try to do is to archive the beauty and the depth, the power, the genius, the creativity of African American preaching, because so much of it has gone to the grave. So many of our preachers have done genius, but it's like, a grandmama that can make pound cake unlike anybody else in the world. And then she dies and don't leave a recipe. So the kids are just scratching and clawing, trying to figure out how to make pound cake like grandmama has. She just left the rest. So a lot of preachers do not leave a recipe. So when you don't leave a recipe, they imitate your clothes. They look like E. Dewey Smith. They sound like E. Dewey Smith. They copy your clothes, but they have no idea of what you're doing. So you sitting down with us gives us the opportunity to begin, and I hope even out of this for you, that you begin thinking about writing your method down, or to keep it so that you can pass on a recipe. Now, we were having this conversation a moment ago about, so I'm gonna give you a chance to chime in about all of the great preachers. We have no record. Tell me, go. So, we had this conversation, so let me let you get it.
Yeah, well, there's, so many have gone on that we still fortunately have some YouTube clips of them, but to get in their brains to figure out how to take that. And me being someone who's been involved in athletics, now I'm part of a staff at the University of Colorado. I'm on staff there and run a youth basketball league I've coached for 30 years. And what I've discovered is through the NBA Classic channel, or through YouTube, or the instant classic football games, kids now get a chance to watch Dan Marino in 1983, who was born in 2000. They were able to see how he threw the ball. And what is happening is you got 7'4" centers out of France playing the NBA. But because of what Hakeem Olajuwon did, now you got Victor Wembanyama. Because Magic Johnson can be studied from Flint to Michigan State to the Lakers, Magic Johnson, his approach to the game gives birth to LeBron James. People try to say LeBron is MJ. No, LeBron is Magic. Kobe Bryant takes what Michael Jordan did and takes it to another level by having a better jump shot. So the game, the players are becoming more skilled. They're faster. Centers, when I grew up, centers, you stayed in the paint and you got rebounds. Now centers dribble the basketball. Jokic from Denver, he'll kill you from shooting threes, passing triple-double. Never happened, but it's because of the pattern, and because athletics have been chronicled, where you can study. Hakeem Olajuwon does training throughout the summers, even now, where they bring him in with big men and even guards. And so what happens with African American preaching, unfortunately, our stuff wasn't chronicled, it wasn't captured. I saw something the other day with J.H. Jackson preaching at the National Convention in 1972. So it's an audio, you can hear it. Sandy Ray, of course, we got things from Gardner Taylor. Sandy Ray pastored the church where I pastor now. But that's nothing, he wrote some books, but what was his method for preaching? What did Manuel Scott or Adam Clayton Powell, or I just can go on and on and on. What did they do that was effective fundamentally? That's what it is. It's the fundamentals. Every sport, there are fundamentals to the game. And now kids can get on PlayStation. They know whether it's cover 2 in football, cover 0, they know how to call plays. The fundamentals of it, they understand it just by playing video games. But that doesn't translate to preaching prior to this, because we have no video creator. So that's why I appreciate what you're doing, because how do we capture those stories? If not, 20 years from now, what are they going to listen to? And what will they be the next iteration of? Understanding who they are, taking this blueprint, this template, but then incorporating that with your skills, your talents, and whatever God gives you, and 30 years later, find your voice with it. So I think that's so important that we capture this.
Yes, and that's why I appreciate you, coming, to do this because it's a part of such a rich legacy. And so one of the things that I say in class is that no preacher is greater than the tradition that birthed the preacher.
My goodness.
So as great as Martin Luther King preacher, or any preacher, as great as Gardner, we've had thousands of Gardner Taylors. We've had thousands of Martin Luther King Jr. Because my analogy for it is like Old Man River. It just keeps, the river keeps popping up. These preachers, it just keeps birthing them. And so we have preachers who get up who are ignorant of the tradition.
Isn't that something? Wow.
So it's like, sometimes I say in class, the text that you're looking at has been preached at least for 2,000 years.
My goodness.
And probably 300 or 400 years in the black church.
My goodness.
And you get up and you're ignorant of,
My goodness.
and you think you're saying something new.
My goodness.
This thing that,
and if it's new, it's probably wrong. It could be a great chance it's wrong.
Right. So I want to go to your music career and just the versatility. So tell me about, how you birthed that and how it has, I remember some of your postings and things where you were saying you had no idea it was going to blow up like that.
My father was a guitar player and quartet singer. My grandfather was a quartet singer. Dad put a guitar in my hand at 3. I was taking piano lessons at 5, playing the drums at 8, directing the choir, singing the choir. So I would direct the choir and could lead a choir at 14, 15, adults, and command them, and they respected me. Well, when I started preaching at 17, all of my mentors, every single one, local pastors said, you got to make a choice. That you will never be respected as a preacher because people are going to see you as this piano player and choir director. Preachers don't play the piano. Preachers don't write the choir. And ironically, I've heard that story from many others where often preachers who are musical, their preaching ministry is not as respected or as widely regarded. I've heard that from the late Clay Evans. We had a conversation once, and somebody at the convention called him a singing preacher. And because of how he had processed that,
shaped his ministry.
Yeah, he was offended by that. He said, I'd rather be known as a preacher who sings, not a singing preacher, because it felt like that was lifting one over the other. I've heard that from Marvin Sapp, Bishop Marvin Winans, Shirley Caesar, Donna McClurkin. So often preachers who are musical, who sing, don't get the same regard of respect in their preaching. And so as a consequence, for me, it was, do you want to be a preacher or choir director? So even though I had all this love for music and writing songs all my life, I said, well, no, I'm not going to focus on that. And so I would produce records or write songs for different people periodically, but and sing in church, but never wanted to pursue it professionally, I guess, because I didn't want that dichotomy. I wanted to be known as the preacher. But prior to my mom passing away, she passed in 2016, we had a conversation one time, and this might have been 2013. And she said, I want you to take this, 2014. She said, I want you to take this more seriously. I let her hear a song that I had written. And she said, God gave you a gift. And she said to me something I had never thought about it. She said, David wasn't just a king. David was a shepherd. He was a harpist. He was a writer. Without all those experiences that God gave him, we don't get the totality of who David is. She said, so there are some things that you can express preaching or teaching wise that you never will be able to express. Some other things that you can express that you'll never express if you don't use that gift as well. I remember Melva Costin, my professor of worship, said something once in seminary. She said over 70% of the theology of African Americans is derived from music. Yet over 80% of the people who write music have never attended Sunday school. Right. So, so that irony was challenging, but I still had these strongholds on me because I want to be respected as a preacher. Right. So in order to be respected as a preacher, you got to stay low and keep music on the background. Mm-hmm. And so my mom passed. Here's the irony. 2 years, I hadn't written anything. And my godmother died 1 week. I was expecting it. My mother died the next week and didn't tell me she was leaving. 3 days after my mom died, my best friend from college died. He helped me plan my mom's funeral, and an hour later he passed. Mm. And 3 weeks after my mom passed, my sister passed. Mm. So 4 funerals, 28 days. Right. 3 days later, my brother had a stroke. Wow. A month later, my older sister went into cardiac failure. The doctor said it was something called broken heart syndrome. Mm. So me, the guy who's always jovial and laughing, and always the life of the party, always seeing the glasses half filled rather than half empty, went through the deepest and lowest and darkest moment and deepest depression. I was paralyzed by grief. Never thought it could happen. But, eventually got therapy and kind of processed it. But the interesting thing was my mom, her voice and the messages and what I promised her is what gave birth to my writing song. And so when pandemic hit, sometimes you say, what would you do if you had the time to do it? Right. So the pandemic gave me time to do it. And so I recorded an whole album, a song called Your Presence is a Gift. Well, was #1 on the radio charts. And, I won a Stellar Award, nominated 2 Dove Awards, Grammy consideration, from my first solo project, which was really an ode, I guess, to my mom. Yeah. But the album was called God, period. But what the pain gave me the messages.
So we preached together in the heart of that. We were in, you and your son in the ministry, right outside Chicago.
Moses Harry, yes, University, yes. And
you said, you preached the first service, I preached the second one, and you got up and said, I played my mother's voice on, remember that? Yeah. And you dropped into it, and you told us all about it, and then you went and preached a marvelous sermon you brought us up. So that album is an ode to your mom. So I was asked to do, I try not to inject myself too much because people, they watch the interview to watch you.
No, we need to hear your injections.
And so I was asked to do the words of comfort. Mm-hmm. My former CFO, his name was Anthony Brown at Mississippi Boulevard. He died, and I loved him deeply. God, I loved him. And because he has a pastor, he stood at Mississippi Boulevard, J. Lawrence Turner's the pastor, he preached the eulogy. They asked me to do words of comfort. They asked me for 5 minutes, to say 5 minutes. So usually, when we approach the words of comfort, we got something we can shrink down to 3 minutes and, we bring a text. And I said, no, I'm not gonna bring a text. I said, the preacher's coming. I just wanna say to you, words of comfort, it's gonna be rough. Words of comfort, I was a pastor almost 30-something years, and my parents were both living. I never really had a close death. I said, my father died, and it dropped me into a level of grief I never had experienced. And I said, it felt like my cells were grieving. half of my cells come from him. And they miss him. That's at the level of grief I was at. And so it took me 2 years. 2 years. And I said, I need to apologize for all those funerals that I did that I didn't understand. All those, but it's different when you sit there on that front row and it's your people. We quote the stuff. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. When it's your people. And I said to them, it's gonna be rough. It's gonna hurt. I said, but God is able. And I said, people want you to move on. Right. There ain't no moving on. Right. It's only moving forward if you can find a project, paint something, draw something, write something, create a scholarship. For me, it was writing a memoir. It took me 2 years, I wrote a memoir around my father. That we have to memorialize it. I said my email address, we had a daughter that died, lived 9 hours and died. I ain't changed my email. I still got an AOL email address because I gave her name, my email address. You gotta find some way. Yes. So my words of comfort is, you can get through it. God is going to bring you through it, but God's going to give you something. I don't know if it's a scholarship fund. I don't know if it's an album. I don't know if it's a book. I don't know if it's a painting. I don't know if it's a tree, if it's a garden. I don't know what it is. But my word of comfort is you're going to find it. And you're going to move forward and you'll find that he's still with you in a different way. She's still with you in a different way. So that's my testimony, just off of that album. You telling, that might be why that album won so much, because it came from such a deep place in you.
You know, it's what you're saying is so powerful and transformative, because what do you do with this grief? I'm sitting with it and I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. You know, for the first time in my life, there's no home to go back to. Mm-hmm. I was talking to my wife once. She was like, "How do you feel?" I said, well, at the end of the day, my entire life, I always knew I could go home. I said, if you left me today, I said, I can get a new wife. God forbid, but I can get a new wife. Right. But as long as I live, I'll never be able to get another mom. And we were incredibly close. And I felt like I didn't have closure. What would the last conversation had been if I had known it would be the last one? So I felt that, but in that studio, without a doubt, it was as if she was in there with me, guiding the whole. I should have called her the executive producer on the project. And people have told me from all over the world, this album pulled me out of the doldrums. And I believe that happened because of where it came from. Right. And I just think that preachers, I think we can come to seminary, we need to get the models, we need to take our craft more seriously, but we also have to work on being well and acknowledging, because if we're not well and being superhuman, not able to be vulnerable, I think a lot of times we can't connect with the people because in our desire to be overly deep or super spiritual and not human enough. Right. And so being able to, not narcissism, but being able to at the same time to allow your pain. Bishop Jakes said something to me some years ago. He said, when I find myself struggling in the preaching moment, I go to my pain. He said, and whatever happens when I go to my pain, it transformed the moment. Right. I'm in the text, but I got to go to my pain. Right. He says, when you feel like you're struggling and it's not coming across, go to your pain. Right. Find a way in that text to go to your pain. Right. So I think that album for me was going to my pain.
I am so just blessed by our conversation and to hear the backstory behind, because we focus on the, winning the Grammy and all of that's good stuff. But there's some preacher who's watching this, or some who just lost somebody, who you just blessed.
Wow.
Because they say preach your way through it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and there's a role for that.
Absolutely.
You do preach your way through it,
yes.
But you can't preach your way through it.
No, listen, yeah, I couldn't. That was some days I couldn't get out of bed, and I think the biggest challenge for me, as I look back at it, funeralizing my mother, my sister, my best friend, my godmother in 28 days, picking out 4 caskets, planning 4 eulogies, writing 4 obituaries, picking out 4 cemetery plots. The biggest challenge was I was too busy being the preacher. I never allowed myself to be a son. And because of that, I didn't handle my grief in a healthy way. I made a lot of mistakes during that time. And I know it was because I wasn't myself. Mm-hmm. And so I think the exegesis of self is important. Right. You know what I mean? You can exegete a text, but can you exegete yourself? And then I think the other thing that has blessed me is going through that process. Now, so many others, as you said, and I'm responsible now. I've got maybe 150 pastors who I licensed, baptized, ordained, employed, installed, many of whom were teenagers and kids. When I baptized them, I became the pastor, 2 of your students, Reginald Sharp, we mentioned earlier, Jennifer Carter, they were kids when I got them. And now they are prolific, preeminent preachers, but they were kids. Right. But the reality is I have to model, and hopefully be a good example of modeling preaching, but at the same time, life. Reginald had 4 or 5 relatives die in less than a year. Yeah. Well, my journey, my story, I can tell him when his father died a few months ago, I'm here, and because he heard my story now, can you come preach for me that Sunday? I can't do this. So having that type of relationship and that story hopefully gives him empowerment so he can navigate his journey much better than I did. Right. So that's my responsibility, I believe.
So I've asked you a lot of questions. Are there any questions that you wanted me to ask you that I didn't ask you?
I just want to have a conversation, I'm just beyond honored to be here. I really am. Yeah. I think this is such a necessary work, and for me to be considered to be here I wish my mom could be here to see this. This is a signal honor, just to have this conversation with you, because I have such tremendous respect for who you are and what you do. So I'm deeply honored and humbled by this.
Well, man, I just say to you, thank you so much for the respect and just trying to. I'll tell you what Jeffrey Johnson said. He said, "Frank, this is Eastern Star. He says, Frank, I'm just trying not to flunk my exposure."
My God, wow.
I got exposed. Jeremiah Wright was my pastor. I saw Charles Gilchrist Adams. I saw Prathia Hall. I saw Charles Booth. I can go on. Anybody, Gardner Taylor, everybody, I saw it. I was exposed to him, I have a relationship with him. I try not to just flunk my exposure.
My God, that is so good.
Well, it's Jeffrey Johnson, I stole it.
It's rich.
It is, trying not to flunk my exposure.
That's rich.
And then secondly, when we did the anthology, Martha Simmons and I did the Preaching with Sacred Fire, the anthology of African American preaching. It put me deeply in touch with the tradition, what's been passed to us. And so I have this thing where I say, the traditional theological discussion is, did God create ex nihilo out of nothing, or did God create out of substance? Yeah. And so I believe that God created out of substance, though God created the substance, it may be mute. But I do know that every preacher was created out of the substance that's been passed to us. And I want to honor that.
My goodness.
I don't want to flunk that, what was passed to me. I want to leave something for the next generation. I want to I'm at the stage now that I'm a cheerleader for the next generation. I say to young preachers, I want to see you win. I'm not competing with anybody.
Right.
I want to see you win.
Right.
Because if you win, we win.
Right.
We got this thing that's been passed, and this tradition. God, it's just a gift, man. I'll stop because the focus is you, not me. I was a young kid. I was in high school. I was in college. I was a junior in college, and one of our friends, we were on the same basketball. I went away to Champaign-Urbana for college, University of Illinois. I came home for the summer, and a friend of ours was killed in a botched shoe store robbery, working part-time, right across Chicago, back alley from me. We had a real close relationship. And I was a grieving, we sat 83rd and Damon, L.K. Curry.
Yeah.
He preached the eulogy. And when he got through, I felt better.
My God.
And I started saying, how do you take this room of despairing young people, because young people think they ain't ready for death at all.
Exactly.
They ain't thought about death. I wouldn't think about death.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Right.
And when he finished, and I was going to church and all that, so I knew it's the word, but it was something about his word. It was something about him, the way he did it, what he illustrated. I don't remember the text. I don't remember the sermon. I remember how I felt.
My God.
And I said, how in the world do you do that? Bring people from despair to hope, preaching.
It's funny you said that, because for 36 years, my best preaching has been at funerals. Truth, it's a true story. It's a true story. And that challenge, I think my creativity, I think this sense of responsibility. Yeah. When people have lost a loved one, there's nothing more debilitating. No, and that, for me, it brings a challenge out.
It does.
Jesus couldn't be there in person, so he sent me. You know what I mean?
Right,
so I'm here on his behalf. So I've always taken it and tried to personalize eulogies, and to the point where people, even now, sometimes people, they believe that it can help transform and bring healing. That healing process can begin. That's a powerful thing. That's a powerful thing, because I take that very seriously to this day. And I think through my mom's that experience is taking it to another level. Yeah. Only challenge now is I can't stop crying myself sometimes when I'm looking at them.
Right, that's right.
Because I see myself, through the people.
So you're having a conversation. So one of my daughters in ministry said that we had really done a wonderful job preparing her for pastoring. And her name is Janae Pitts-Murdoch. She's a pastor of Light of the World Christian Church. She's a fabulous preacher. She's in full zenith. She said, you prepared me for everything except the grief of losing members and burying members and friends.
My goodness.
And I said to her yesterday, I said, I didn't prepare you because I didn't know. It wasn't until my father died.
My goodness.
And if I could,
my goodness,
I'd go back and apologize to all them families for 31 years of ministry.
Because you didn't know.
I didn't know.
My goodness.
I just, until you sit there, until you stay up at night, until you can't get out of bed, until the easy answers, until it's 3 a.m., ain't nobody but you and God, and you searching, how in the world am I going to make a life without this person? And I think that one day I'm going to preach that scripture. I haven't preached it yet. This feels like the sum total of our time together, and I'm going to give you the last word before we sign off. I'm wrestling with that scripture, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief.
My goodness.
I'm wrestling with it in its context of what, the suffering servant. I'm also wrestling with it in the context of my own life. to be acquainted with grief. I mean, it's a man of sorrow. What does that text mean? What does it mean then? What does it mean, as you say, the edge? What does it mean today? What does it mean for us? Is it possible that this gospel makes us men and women of sorrow and acquainted with grief, and yet somehow in this world ye will have tribulation, but be of good cheer? I mean, all of this, trying to work all that out.
My goodness.
But I appreciate.
Can't wait to hear it.
It's one of those that sit in you for a while, and the moment's gonna come.
My goodness.
My high school locker partner is grappling right now with leukemia, and Dr. Barbara Holmes died. Dr. David Daniels, McCormick, died. Bishop Byfield Hennings, AME bishop here, and it's gone. I mean, it's gone like. So I appreciate the time of talking about grief. You know, I've kind of dropped into that. Yeah. So I'm going to give you the last word. Wrap us up. Whatever you want to say, however you want to say it.
You know, that the grief, and to not flunk my exposure when I think about Dr. Randall Bailey, Melva Costin, Drs. Henry and Ella Mitchell, I.R. Clark, David Rensberger, Riggins Earl. You know, so much of Mackeen Carter, you know, my grandfather. So much of what I've gleaned that's made me who I am. So blessed by the exposure, but also acquainted with grief. You know, I had the opportunity to preach in Miami a few months ago, and Dr. Carter's wife came, Dr. Pat. She taught at Florida Memorial for many years, and to hug her and to hear her talk about how much Dr. Matt Carter loved me, and how proud he was of me, you know. And when I think about, you know, his death, our conversations, and how I miss him, but at the same time, empowered by his life. Right. From the grave, he's still leading me, still teaching me, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I think that's the challenge, you know, at this stage. I've been preaching 36 years, pastoring 34 years, almost 35 years. And so being younger, wanting to be on the stage. Right. And now, you know, 36 years later, I want to be the stage. Mm-hmm. Right. You know, so as you were saying earlier, God has more in me, but to do that, you know, do the conferences and the rally, that's not what really excites me. It is helping to empower, helping people to avoid the same mistakes, and letting them learn to use your gifts and realize that boxes are for things and not the preacher. Mm. So if you're a preacher, you can be in the academy. Mm-hmm. You can do music. You can be entrepreneurial. You know, you can be in the marketplace. You know, I can preach on Sundays and be on the sidelines with the University of Colorado on Saturday. Right. As a coach, as a recruiter. Right. And all of it works and can be included in the gospel story, mm-hmm. and to help inspire people. And so I'm excited about what that looks like. Yeah. This is my last word. You're gonna have to take me with you to one of these University of Colorado games. I just need to do that. Yeah, I got you. Now, I told you all this was gonna be good. You need to share this with somebody. This has been rich. We're out of time. I wish we could go and more and more and more. And I wanna thank you, my brother, for sharing, for vulnerability, transparency, honesty, a real conversation. And I'm better, I think you're better, I think the audience is better. And so we're gonna get this out, and just God bless you for your ministry. Thank you so much. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being you. Keep encouraging us, and thank you for being a chronicler. Yes. 21st century Ezra. Yeah, getting our stories out. Thank you. So important. Thank you, sir. It's my privilege.